I just realized I have laundry going. So I'm gonna go turn that off real quick. Hello, people of the internet. My name is Ronnie Jo, and I'm a registered dietitian who does things here on YouTube. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Doing pretty well. I got coffee. I'm in a different area. Again, I like recording in my bedroom, but I really missed recording at a table. And so I'm in like the dining room area. There's the living room and the kitchen. So I'm here. I have a ring light going on right now, and sometimes ring lights give me a headache. So I don't know how long I'm going to be using the ring light, to be honest. But here we are for that right now. Okay, so today's video is part 3 of my fat body image health series. And today is about fat phobia and body image, because I do think they are very important to talk about together. But first, as always, disclaimer, this video is for educational entertainment purposes only. Please talk to a healthcare professional who knows you before taking advice from everybody on the internet, myself included. Thank you. So, I first want to talk about fat phobia, and I want to talk about how as a society we became scared of fat as a nutrient, and then I'm going to talk about how we became scared of fat on people, because they are two separate things, but they're very important to the overall understanding of fat phobia. So let's start with fear of fat as a nutrient. So in the 1960s, yes, the 1960s, we're jumping back 60 years ago, the sugar industry funded research to kind of overplay the dangers of fat and downplay the effects of sugar on cardiovascular disease. Capitalism. And so the Sugar Research Foundation, lovely foundation, it actually sponsored research done at Harvard University, to do a review of some research studies and experiments about sugar. And then this review was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1967. And you want to know what this review found out? Well, it found out that a handful of studies that indicated that sugar was more of a problem when it came to cardiovascular disease. Well, it determined that there were a whole bunch of flaws done in these experiments and studies, and that fat should be the main focus on decreasing so that you can have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease. And so this review, like I said, was published in New England Journal of Medicine in 1967. And one key thing that they left out in this publication of this review was that the Sugar Research Foundation sponsored it. And so to most research articles today, since we have access to the internet, you can find out who sponsors them or funds them. And then you can determine whether or not that is a valuable research article for yourself because you have the people that are funding it. But back in 1967, we did not have access to this, and when the New England Journal of Medicine publishes something, a lot of people take it as truth. And so the sugar industry was actually really smart when doing this, because they kind of shaped the scientific discussion for the next 60 years around fat being the bad guy and kind of taking the blind eye to sugar. And so when you tell everybody that they needed to cut out fat or reduce fat, you drastically change the flavor and texture of foods when they don't have fat in them. And one good way to fix this is by adding sugar. And America's sugar consumption after this article rose by like a third. So capitalism. Again, there's a lot of capitalism in this video. And so that's really where America's fear of fat as a nutrient really started. And now I want to talk about why Americans and America fears fat on people. Now, if you have heard anything about body size and health, you probably have heard about the obesity epidemic. That people nowadays have a higher BMI and that this is a public health issue. Now, I have a lot of problems with the BMI scale. It was developed by a white mathematician in like the 1800s, and it only accounted for white males. And BMI doesn't account for genetics, socioeconomic status, culture, anything besides your height and your weight. And while in medical settings, BMI can be used, it's kind of like a general guidance for medical professionals. It should not be the end-all be-all. And unfortunately, by calling it an obesity epidemic, you kind of put the whole center on BMI. And now having a higher BMI in some cases can pose you at a higher risk for certain diseases. But like I said, it's not the end-all be-all, and there are a lot of other factors that go into health and health outcomes than BMI. But I want to talk about why the obesity epidemic became a thing, why people have larger bodies nowadays. So over the last 50 years or so, our availability to calorically dense food has grown exponentially. Think of fast food and convenience foods. And then with that, with technological advances, we don't have to be as active. We're not farmers anymore. Most of us are not farmers anymore. And most people live in areas that are not terribly walkable. You have to drive, and so that decreases our activity as well. And then there's a lack of funding in schools for nutrition education, quality nutrition education, I should say, and like physical activity classes like PE or even recess. And then there is a lack of an ability for one parent to stay home with the children, to cook and clean and do activities with the children. And so all of these factors and lots more kind of come together to increase America's body size by increasing the fat on people's bodies. And now your body size is determined by a lot of factors. Some that cannot be changed as easily, like genetics and socioeconomic status and culture and food availability, and by some things that are more easily changeable, like your food intake and your activity level. And medical professionals, because these factors are more modifiable than others, medical professionals tend to focus on the food intake and the activity level, but unfortunately focus too heavily on them, and it kind of puts the other factors in the dark. And this, paired with the fact that there's a lack of education about health determinants, it makes our society and even some doctors wrongfully assume that size is the indication of health. And this isn't entirely their fault, because before we had tests to determine health and brains that understood science, we had to use appearance as an indication of health. If you're alive, great. If you are attractive, even better, because that means you could propagate the species. And unfortunately, our lizard brains have not really moved on for that. That's kind of why we still see size as an indication of health, unfortunately. And so this is a really good segue into body image, now that we have kind of covered why America hates fat. And so now we can talk about the body image issues that comes from this. And so beauty standards have changed over time. They've changed in my lifetime. But different cultures have different changes in beauty standards and different body image that they hold more desirable. Like some cultures, a larger body is more desirable because that means you have more resources. In America, being thin usually means you have more resources, you have more access to quality food, you have more time and availability to exercise. And really what this means is you have more money, which, again, capitalism. Great. But to be even more recent, social media has made this so much worse with the filters and the angles and the unrealistic body shapes and surgery that people lie about and the quick fixes and the targeted weight loss ads. This all has a really negative impact on body image, self-worth, and people's relationship with food. There's tons of studies that show that this negatively impacts people, especially young girls. And this causes a really awful feedback loop of decreased activity, increased emotional eating, decreased participation in social events, increased incidences of anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, and overall, a decreased quality of life. And so it is a multifaceted issue. Now, as a dietitian, I wish that more people would eat more fruits and vegetables and participate in activity that they enjoy every day? Of course. But one, it's not always that easy to do that. And two, if health were that simple, we wouldn't have doctors. Like if I had the answer to solving everybody's health problems, I would be a millionaire. But I'm not. And so the best I can do is talk about it and try to get people to understand. And so I really hope that with the fat acceptance movement and the body neutrality movement, that we will start to understand that body size doesn't determine health. We'll start to rewire our lizard brains, and that fat is something that we don't need to be scared of. One thing I do appreciate about the keto diet, even if I do not like the keto diet, is that it's normalizing fat intake. At least it's normalizing fat intake, even if it is targeted towards weight loss. But I've already done a whole video on that. I'm gonna get angry. But yeah, so the next video is going to be about dietary fat and dietary sugar as nutrients and how they interact in your body and how your metabolism works with them. So if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. I don't know if I'm gonna stay in this area. I guess I'll decide in the editing portion if I like sitting here with this ring light. But yeah, until next time, please stay safe and please stay healthy. Goodbye.